What is the miracle of the perfect preservation of the Quran? The miracle of the perfect preservation of the Quran is this. The Quran has all the features of a book that's been repeatedly changed, and yet it was perfectly preserved in spite of having all the features of a book that's been repeatedly changed. There you have it. It's a miracle. If you ask your Muslim friends what evidence there is for Islam, one of the main responses you'll get is that the Quran has been perfectly preserved. And if you ask your Muslim friends what they mean when they say that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, they'll tell you that the Quran has been completely unchanged from the time it was revealed to Muhammad, and that there has never been a single difference anywhere between any two Qurans. That's what they're taught by their sheikhs and imams. Of course, as soon as you do a little research, you find out that entire chapters of the Quran were lost, that large passages were lost, that verses were lost, that phrases were lost, that manuscripts had to be burned to cover up all the differences in different Qurans, that Quran manuscripts have tons and tons of textual variants, and that even today, Muslims in different parts of the world use different versions of the Quran. But if you tell your Muslim friends any of that, they won't believe you. Why? Well, you're contradicting their sheikhs and imams. Who knows more about Islam, you or their sheikhs and imams? Their sheikhs and imams, obviously. So they're not going to believe you. What your Muslim friends don't realize is that while their sheikhs and imams may know a lot about Islam, they're also compulsive liars. But your Muslim friends don't know that, so you have to show them that their sheikhs and imams admit that large parts of the Quran were lost. Let's see what the Muslim scholars at Islam Q&A say about more than 200 verses being lost from Surah 33 of the Quran. A questioner writes, "There's a hadith in Musnad Ahmed that says 200 verses were abrogated from Surah Al-Ahzab. Is this true?" Spoiler alert, yes it is. But don't take my word for it. Let the scholars explain. Firstly, it was narrated by Abdullah, the son of Imam Ahmed, in Zawaid al-Musnad, Abdur Razak in al-Musannaf, Ibn Hibban in his Sahih, Al-Hakim in al-Mustadrak, Al-Bayhaqi in as-Sunan, Ibn Hazm in al-Muhalla, via Asim ibn Badala, from Zur, who said, "Ubay ibn Ka'b said to me, 'How long is Surat Al-Ahzab when you read it? Or how many verses do you think it is?' I said to him, 73 verses. He said, 'Only? There was a time when it was as long as Surat Al-Baqarah, and we read in it, the old man and the old woman, if they commit zina, then stone them both, a punishment from Allah, and Allah is Almighty, most wise.'" Wow, so Surah 33, which has 73 verses in today's Quran, was originally as long as Surah 2, which has 286 verses in today's Quran. So Surah 33 used to be one of the longest, if not the longest, surah in the Quran. But since more than 200 verses were lost, it's now one of the medium-length surahs. Muslims of the world, did your sheikhs and imams tell you about this before they convinced you that the Quran has been perfectly preserved right down to the letter? Of course they didn't. You only hear about these things from us. In fact, I guarantee that the Muslim who sent the question to Islam Q&A only heard about this issue from a Christian or an atheist. Why are Christians and atheists the only people who tell you about the real history of the Quran? But maybe this source is weak. Let's see. Ibn Hazm, may Allah have mercy on him, said, "This is a clearly Sahih Isnad." Oops. "As clear as the sun." Double oops. "In which there is no fault." Triple oops. End quote. Ibn Kathir, may Allah have mercy on him, said, "This is a Hasan Isnad." This implies that there were more verses in it then the wording and ruling were both abrogated, and Allah knows best. End quote from Tafsir ibn Kathir. There is a corroborating report that was narrated by Abdullah ibn Ahmed in Zawaid al-Musnad. Wahab ibn Baqiya told me, Khalid ibn Abdullah at-Tahan informed me, from Yazid ibn Abi Ziyad, from Zur ibn Hubaysh, from Ubay ibn Ka'b, who said, how many verses do you recite in Surat al-Ahzab? He said, 70-odd verses. He said, we recited it with the Messenger of Allah, blessings and peace of Allah be upon him, like Al-Baqarah, or more than that, and verily the verse of stoning was in it. Oh my goodness, this one says that Surah 33 may have been even longer than Surah 2, even though it's massively shorter in today's Quran. Yazid ibn Abi Ziyad is da'if, weak, but there is nothing wrong with the hadith as there is corroborating evidence for it. So the scholars don't trust Yazid, but since there's corroborating evidence for it, they trust the hadith. This indicates that Surat al-Ahzab was a lengthy surah like Surat al-Baqarah, but most of it was abrogated. When scholars read about hundreds of Quran verses being lost from a single chapter, what do they conclude? That the Quran hasn't been perfectly preserved? No, they conclude that Allah abrogated all those verses that are in His eternal Quran and that He revealed to Muhammad, but that were for some reason forgotten shortly after they were revealed. Allah revealed them just to abrogate them by having people forget them. Starting to see a problem with the Islamic definition of perfect preservation? In the answer to question number 105,746, my goodness, these guys stay busy, we stated that abrogation in the case of the Quran is of three types: abrogation of both the verses and the ruling, abrogation of the ruling but not the verses, and abrogation of the verses but not the ruling. Now this is actually hilarious. Three types of abrogation. So, Allah can remove a verse from the Quran and abrogate the ruling, meaning that the ruling is no longer in the Quran and that it no longer applies. This is abrogation of the verses and the ruling. Allah can also abrogate the ruling but leave the verse in the Quran, meaning that the verse is still in the Quran but that the ruling no longer applies. This is abrogation of the ruling but not the verses. Finally, Allah can remove the verse from the Quran even though the ruling still applies. This is abrogation of the verses but not the ruling. Confused yet? Now you understand why sheikhs and imams don't tell Muslims about any of this. With regard to the abrogation that took place in Surat al-Ahzab of this large number of verses, some of it comes under the heading of abrogation of the verses but not the ruling, as in the case of the verse on stoning, and some of it comes under the heading of abrogation of both the verses and the ruling, as stated above in the words quoted from Ibn Kathir. Az-Zarqani, may Allah have mercy on him, said, with regard to abrogation of the verses but not the ruling, the fact that this occurred is indicated by the Sahih report from Umar ibn al-Khattab and Ubay ibn Ka'b, according to which they said, among the words of Quran that were revealed were the words, the old man and the old woman, if they commit zina, then stone them both. You know that this verse no longer exists between the covers of the Mus'haf or on the lips of the reciters, although the rulings remain in effect and have not been abrogated. The fact that this occurred is also indicated by the Sahih report from Ubay ibn Ka'b, according to which he said, Surat al-Ahzab was equivalent in length to Surat al-Baqarah, or longer. End quote. For more information, please see blah blah blah. So that should give you a glimpse of what Muslim scholars mean when they say that the Quran has been perfectly preserved. When your Muslim friends tell you that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, they mean that the Quran has never been changed in any way. But that view is complete nonsense. Your Muslim friends just have no clue what they're talking about. When Muslim scholars tell you that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, they mean that the Quran has all the features of a book that was changed repeatedly, but that they came up with silly explanations for all of the different kinds of changes. But notice, you could do this with any book. You could take any book in history, and no matter how many times it was changed, you could come up with an explanation for why it was changed, and then claim that all of the changes are consistent with your definition of perfect preservation. To all the sheikhs and imams who are watching, let me say, if your method of defending the perfect preservation of the Quran could be used to defend the perfect preservation of any book ever, you probably need a new method.
It just backfired on me. It just backfired on me. This is a part of a religion. There's a reason to it. Yeah?